Hello and welcome. It's been 3.5 years since the BJP came to power, and there has been a series of hits and misses in the term so far. In this video, I'll talk about the performance of Modi government in 5 sectors: foreign policy, defense, economic reforms, social reforms, and combating terrorism. I promise to keep this 100% factual and not opinion based. Let's start with foreign policy. Since assuming office in May 2014, the Prime Minister has made 56 foreign trips. And large section of foreign policy analysts believe that these trips are highly required for India to make its presence felt as an emerging power. They also suggest that these trips are required for Modi to build a personal equation with other world leaders and accrue political and economic benefits for India. India's entry into the MTCR, the Missile Technology Control Regime for instance, has been attributed to its efforts in the field of diplomacy. Modi and his foreign policy also deserve praise for taking a bold stand of dissent on grounds that are both principled and realist. The government's decision not to send an envoy to China's Belt and Road Forum because China decided to run the CPEC, the Chinese-Pakistan Economic Corridor, through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, a territory that we claim is our own, was simply meant to send a message that you cannot expect a strategic partnership while ignoring our interests. India has also been particularly keen on building ties with America. Since assuming office, Modi has already paid 4 visits there, and from resolving the issue of civil nuclear energy cooperation to significantly upgrading defense cooperation and agreeing on a range of international issues, the ties seem to have reached an extraordinarily good pace. So while India's relationship with its neighbors is a matter of concern, the engagement with the outside world is definitely improving. Turning to defense, the first accomplishment worth pointing out is the implementation of the One Rank One pension scheme for over 21 lakh veterans. There was some disgruntlement over the way it was executed, but it finally took shape. And there are other accomplishments too, such as carrying out of surgical strikes on terror launch pads in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and the scam-free functioning of the Defense Ministry, unlike former Minister A.K. Antony's tenure, which saw scams, crisis and unpreparedness and left a bitter legacy. If you see the way the Indian Army functions, we face some operational gaps such as obsolete air defense guns, inadequate night fighting capabilities and poor ammunition reserves. To address these, 7 projects, including the acquisition of 155mm howitzers, air defense guns and light utility helicopters, were placed in the critical category, 11 such projects in the important category and 8 in the essential category. Though some of these requirements had to come from abroad, the basic aim was that we ensure that we produce maximum in India itself. Till date, no such Make in India defense project has actually taken shape. There were plans to increase the role of private sector in defense production, but that too won't happen before 2019. If you look at the current annual defense budget of India, the 2017-18 outlay of 2.74 lakh crore works out to be just 1.63% of the projected GDP and is the lowest since 1962 war with China. So clearly, there's a lot more that can be done on the defense front. Let's look at economic reforms. We'll take 5 economic indicators. First, GDP. The growth hasn't been good, moved up, stayed between 7 to 8%, then fell down again. Second, job creation, lowest in 8 years, from 9 lakh jobs in 2009 to just over 2 lakh jobs in 2016. Third, non-performing assets, increased from about 2.5 lakh crores in June 2014 to 6.5 lakh crores in December 2016. Fourth, inflation significantly reduced. CPI went down from about 8% in May 14 to just over 2% in April 17. Fifth and last, foreign exchange. The reserves have piled up from $310 billion to $370 billion in just a span of 3 years. So performance hasn't really been good on the economic front, but let's look at 2 of the biggest economic reforms that the government has taken. The demonetization. The government failed to achieve the basic goals behind demonetization, such as expansion of tax base, elimination of counterfeit notes, and promotion of non-cash payments. But it claims that demonetization was also a step to get down to the source and flow of funds that were sloshing around in the informal sector. And think about it, businesses such as jewelry and real estate that mainly transact in cash could not simply curtail their operations. So in the time when these notes were not in the system, they started paying in and accepting checks, enabling the government to track down exactly where these funds came from and where they went. And there were other benefits too, such as detection of shell firms and Benami properties. There were measures to track down, to tram down suspicious transactions. At least 18 lakh people were identified with suspicious transactions just after demonetization. So surely, demonetization cannot be called a grand success. But calling it a big scam, like some did, would only be an exaggeration and sheer politics. The GST. As many as 40 different taxes were merged into a single tax to simplify the structure and make India more business friendly. And while there has been a temporary slowdown in our growth, experts do see a good track in the future. Here's what the IMF chief, Christine Lagarde, had to say about GST.
Collapsing 40 different taxes into one single GST is a monumental effort. And given the implementation associated with it, it's hardly surprising that there is a little bit of a short-term slowdown as a result. But for the medium term, we see a very solid track ahead of the Indian economy.
Turning to social reforms, let's look at performance in 5 sectors. First is power. This sector has been a priority, and with a major push on renewable energy and rural electrification, the results show a good picture. Here's the overall comparison between the UPA 2 and NDA in terms of power performance. Second is sanitation. The Swachh Bharat has surely been a popular campaign, but the basic design could have been better. The argument is that sanitation can only be achieved when communities recognize the need for sanitation and demand sanitation services. Building awareness is therefore important. And while 98% of the Swachh Bharat expenditure is spent on building toilets, we are building toilets at the rate of 56 per minute till 2019, less than 1% has actually been spent on building awareness. Third, education. There have been structural reforms to make school education more accessible, but quality of learning hasn't received much attention. While a lot of money is being spent on teachers' salary and school infrastructure, learning programs account for less than 5% of the total expenditure in each state. And think about it, can we expect our universities to compete globally when the foundation itself is so weak? Fourth is health. A fresh national health policy was issued with several goals, including the expansion of public healthcare system and a target to provide health insurance cover to 70% of the population. But there's lack of clarity on how this is going to be achieved and by when. Fifth and last, agriculture. This sector is in a very bad state. Schemes such as Soil Health Card and Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana have failed to address the basic problems of price stability and exploitative middlemen. We need reforms to make agriculture more lucrative to farmers. Now, there was an allegation that the government in fact introduced new versions of schemes that were already there. And even though about 23 such schemes are alleged to have been copied, most of them are working better now. Take optical fiber. The National Optical Fiber Network, which laid about 5,000 kilometers of optical fiber, was converted to BharatNet that laid over 2 lakh kilometers of optical fiber in a lesser span of time. The no-frills account scheme created about 25 crore bank accounts, while the Jan Dhan Yojana created about 30 crore accounts in just 3 years. The National Girl Child Day program had no separate budgetary allocation, but the new version, Beti Bachao Beti Padhao, had a separate allocation of 200 crore for financial year 17-18. That, ladies and gentlemen, was social reforms. Let's move on to the last area, combating terrorism. Now, if you look at the pattern of terror, one thing that strikes is there hasn't been a single incident of terror that has affected civilians on a large scale since Modi came to power. Now, the reports would say that terror incidents have actually increased since the government came to power, such as this. But these are incidents that have happened on the borders and are directly the result of a tough stand that this government seems to have taken against terror. The National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister, Ajit Doval, in 2015 shed light on the defensive offense strategy that he believes needs to be employed in dealing with Pakistan.
We engage an enemy in three modes. One is a defensive mode. That is, you see all the chowkidars and chaprasis outside. That is, if somebody comes here, we'll prevent him. We will defend this. One is the defensive offense. That is to defend ourselves. We will go to the place from where the offense is coming. And third is the offensive mode, where you go outright. Nuclear threshold is a difficulty in the offensive mode, but not in the defensive offense. While we are working today only in the defensive mode. Now, when we come into the defensive offense, then we start working on the vulnerabilities of Pakistan. It can be economic, it can be internal security, it can be political, it can be their isolation internationally, it can be their this thing like that, of exposing their terrorist activities, or it can be anything.
It makes sense. The UPA, on the contrary, appeared too soft in its approach in dealing with Pakistan. In a shocking disclosure, former Air Chief Marshal Fali Homi said that the Indian Air Force was ready to take revenge for the 2008 Mumbai attacks by performing surgical strikes on terror launch pads in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, but the then UPA government refused, abstaining from a move that, needless to say, would have sent the right message. So that's the end of the video. I did my best to bring you good content, and if you disagree with me on any point, let me know in the comment section below. We'll talk about it. And you should really subscribe to my channel for more such logical and factual videos. We'll meet soon. Thanks.